Everyone I knew then knew I was broke and would promise as we left the bar at the end of the night, overwarmed, hugging sloppily, to keep an ear open for me. It was in this way I arrived one morning at Bertha's door, pressing her buzzer, then banging on her screen, until she opened up and said, "Who the fuck are you?" It was a valid question, one that occupies me most early mornings when I lie in bed and look around my room for an answer. But to Bertha I said, "Sue sent me." "Sue," said Bertha, and I knew what she meant. Sue was an amateur astrologer, problem solver, and know-it-all, though her boyfriend Todd was always putting his hand on my thigh in our booth at the Two-Way. At Sue's New Year's party, he'd pushed me into a corner of the walk-in pantry where I'd been looking for a packet of popcorn to zap. Todd's hair was as big and curly as a clown's, but he had a fascist's face. His jeans were tighter than mine, but I've never tolerated restrictive clothing. To Bertha, I said, "Sue said you needed help." I wasn't feeling well, and it occurred to me I'd need to find a toilet soon. Bertha studied me. She was short and round, with a cropped white hair and a brawler's posture. She wore a grubby kimono, gray sweatpants, shearling slippers. In one hand, in a long ivory holder, a cigarette gently smoked. "You look like shit," Bertha said. She tilted her head, tapped off a talk of ash, and dragged. The harder she sucked, the more the red end of the thing came to life. She held the smoke inside her a while, then exhaled in my face. "Well, come on," she said. I knew there were people who lived gracefully, grandly, who walked on rare rugs and sat on fine furniture and observed or ignored the world by raising or lowering their custom-made window shades, but I'd never met them before this. Bertha lifted an arm and waved it all away like a fly, then led me to the lower level, to a small, white, windowless room where she had a great deal of paper needing shredding. "Can you do that?" she asked, and ashed onto her own shiny parquet floor. I said yes. "Yes," I said, when she asked me to clean her cat's litter box, though she had a housekeeper who came daily. "Yes," I said, when she asked me to pick up the shit left at her gate by the dogs of the neighborhood, and sometimes by the men who loitered in the park across the street. "Yes," I said, when she told me to return her half-eaten sandwich to the deli and demand a refund. "Yes," I said, when she sent me to the coffee shop for an empty cup and told me to bring back as many sugar packets and thimbles of creamer as I could carry. When she said I was fat, or that I had a bad haircut, or poor fashion sense, or that I smelled like a drunk, I didn't disagree. After a few weeks, Bertha had enough sugar and creamer to make a pie. She had her cook bake it, and when it was done, she brought me a small slice on a disposable plate. I was sitting on the floor of her closet, engrossed in the organization of her large beaded purse collection. The purses looked fragile, but had withstood a lot of grabbing and tossing and dropping, a lot of yanking open and shut. Some had tender silk interiors that had been stuffed, then scratched by ragged fingernails. I looked at the pie, then back at Bertha. "Thank you," I said, surprised. The pie had an off, bitter flavor, but I ate it quickly and licked up the crumbs. Bertha paid me in cash at the end of each week. The day of the pie slice, a Friday, I stood outside her gate and, under cover of the large, shabby tote bag I always carried, counted what she'd handed me, feeling the eyes of the men who loitered in the park across the street as I did so. The money was $10 short, so I went back to Bertha's step and buzzed. "What?" she said when she opened up. But when I explained, she shook her head and said she deducted it for the pie I'd eaten. "Oh," I said. She rolled her eyes and slammed the door. There was a volatile feeling at the Two-Way that night. Several bottles were dropped and smashed. Somebody got a pool cue to the eye. The toilet backed up all over the ladies' room floor and oozed out past the door. In our booth, I was wedged between Todd and Matilda. Across from us sat Sue, who was looking at me and smiling strangely. "How's it going at Bertha's?" she said. Well, you know what she's like," I said. "Do I?" said Sue. "When you worked for her," I said. "Worked for her," Sue said, and laughed. "I'd never worked for Bertha," she said, stirring her drink with its thin red straw. She brought it to her lips and sipped, looked lovingly at Todd. I saw then that Sue had set me up. Sue had won. It didn't matter, I was too stupid to know we had been playing. My luck got worse in the years that followed. I developed a stooped posture and a persistent pain in my neck. I lost several important teeth. My eyesight declined rapidly, and nothing I ate went down easy. I bounced from town to town and job to job, like turning a key and door after door, but none of them opened. At last I landed in a little mountain town and found work as a receptionist in a dental office. The dentist, whose name was Dr. Clarice, was a severe, strongly built beauty with a broad, cold face. She fixed my teeth and told me about her childhood in a small village in another country where she'd been raised on goat's milk and horse meat. When Dr. Clarice saw me rubbing my neck one day, she called her friend JC and booked me an appointment. JC was an abbreviation of a long name that was difficult for dumb Americans. But when I met him, I did see something Christ-like in his appearance, though I was raised by atheists. I took off my clothes and lay face down on his table. He placed a hand on my neck and tightened his grip. "What is this?" he said, pressing his thumb on the hard, dense knob under my skin at the base of my skull, to the right of my spine. "Help!" I cried, but JC only pressed harder and said, "This is very bad." The pain had a kind of dark, ugly feeling that filled me with disgust. The acrid taste of Bertha's sugar packet pie, long forgotten, was suddenly in my mouth again. JC pressed harder and harder on the lump until there was a pop, not unlike the burst of a ripe pimple. The thing that had long been lodged there, like a bird little ghoul, was suddenly gone. JC went quickly to the corner of the room and began brushing himself off with brisk strokes, making a loud shushing sound as he did so. I felt I might float off the table. Eventually I was able to ask, "What are you doing?" "That was very bad," he said, continuing to brush and shush. "What was?" I said. "I have to clean," he said, "or else I have bad sleep, bad dream." "We should pray," he said. So when he was done cleaning himself of me, I put my clothes on and we sat in silence a while. We were supposed to have our eyes closed, but I kept opening mine to look at him. He looked frail around the face and neck, like my mother, when she'd finally spent her whole self and, juiceless, collapsed. But I felt strong, like runners who train at high altitudes, then come down to sea level, or like a person who's been carrying someone on her back so long, she's forgotten what it feels like to be alone.